Welcome to the Healthy Careers Podcast, where we help healthcare providers succeed on purpose. We take a conversational approach in learning from others who have been there and done that. Join us as we share expert insights from real people who are just like you, because we believe that success isn't just a destination, it's an intentional journey, and you don't have to do it alone.
Welcome back to the Healthy Careers Podcast. I'm your host, Maddie, and today I'm excited to have John Brady on the call with me today. He is the CEO at Fox Valley Orthopedics and has had a very successful career as a leader. So I'm excited to ask him a few questions, as I'm sure there are many listening who admire and hope to be in his position one day. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Of course. Great. So first, tell us a little bit more about yourself and, what you do and your day-to-day.
Well, as you mentioned, I'm the Chief Executive Officer for Fox Valley Orthopedics, which is a multi-site orthopedic surgery organization, independent practice in the far western suburbs of the Chicago area, particularly the Fox River Valley area, which is Geneva, St. Charles, Elgin, those areas, which are 25, 30 miles west of downtown Chicago. We have 8 physician offices with PT clinics in them, and then 2 standalone PT clinics. And we go from almost the Wisconsin state line all the way down to the Illinois River in north central Illinois, and then pretty much the far western suburbs all the way across the state. People come to us from. We have 23 physicians. Most of them are orthopedic surgeons. We have a couple of physical medicine and rehabilitation doctors. We have a couple of podiatrists, 3 podiatrists actually, a rheumatologist, and we just brought in a primary care physician last year. We also have a number of physician extenders, PAs, and we're in the process of recruiting for a nurse practitioner.
Very nice. Okay. Well, that keeps you busy for sure. How do you manage?
We also have our own ambulatory surgery center, which we own, and it's independent.
I think I saw something that said like 65% of ASCs nowadays are privately owned, which I think is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, no, it's great to be independent because we can make decisions and move much faster. For example, we have a physician who does a lot of high volume of knee joint replacements. And he uses a robot. He uses the DePuy robot, the VELYS robot. And he came to us and said, look, I can be more efficient if you get me another one. So we just signed the contract to get our second robot, and we're hoping to see him do 8 surgeries, 7 to 8 surgeries a day, knee replacements a day, which is fairly high volume. If I was in a health system, an academic health system or a large health system, it would have taken months to get approvals with all kinds of business case development and things like that. Now we can, in an independent group, we're very big, but we're also very nimble in that, I can do a quick business, a quick business report, and make a decision based on that. We build business cases all the time, and we don't have to have them vetted through 800 different channels, and we can show return on investment. We can move. So that's the nice thing.
Yeah, I agree. My first job was in a nonprofit hospital, and I remember it was part-time while I was in college, and I was about to graduate. I said, look, my dad's about to cut me off financially, so is there a full-time role here? And they said, we really wish there was, but we have to wait to see for the budget for next year. And, it could be that it happens, but it could be that it doesn't. Well, funny story is 2 years later, they called me because I left to go get a full-time role. And they said, you want your job back? And I was like, I live in a different state now, but I'm really happy that you called me. But it took them 2 years to get the approval to go from a part-time to a full-time role. So
yeah, I could bore you with dozens of those over my career. Yeah, so the independent nature of our practice is great. We can respond to market needs and create market needs in a much faster way.
Which I think from a employer or employee standpoint, right? If you're a physician coming out of school or you're just an experienced physician, that would be something that if you are kind of that hunter mentality or you want to be able to have that autonomy and have that voice, being somewhere like that is going to be much more fruitful for you than, like you said, being in an academic hospital.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't want to put down academic hospitals or health systems because they do great work,
Yeah.
but I will say this: coming to an independent practice, yeah, the bigger systems are gonna the upfront packages are typically more attractive, but as time goes on, you want a partner track, you want an equity track,
Yeah.
and you want to get something for your labors and your hard work down the road, and
Mm-hmm.
in a practice like ours, for orthopedic surgeons, we offer, a partner track where after 2 years, if you're, demonstrating success in our model, you have
Mm-hmm.
the opportunity to buy in at a very reasonable amount to become an equal
Yeah.
partner. And that benefits the partners because it shares the expense of the practice, and it benefits the new partners because it gets them a new revenue opportunity and new streams, the passive revenue that they get from ancillary services and other things.
Mm-hmm.
So long term, from just a purely financial standpoint, long term, if you're going to be a hardworking doctor, you're going to do very well in an independent partner model. If that's not what drives you, or you're comfortable with what they're offering, then the other one works just as well too. But you are going to work harder in an independent practice because typically when you get that partner track, you're now an owner. I have 14 bosses, the 14 partners in our practice. Some have been there 25, 30 years. Some have been there 25, 30 months, but they're both owners. There's a 10-year thing there,
Mm-hmm.
but for the most, if you want to set up a career with long-term, sustainability where you do have that autonomy, there's a downside to it. You do face headwinds. I mean, COVID was much easier for large health systems to manage because they have hundreds of days cash on hand, where an
Yeah.
independent practice may have, 2 or 3 payrolls cash on hand. But that's just the risk of being an independent business owner. It is expensive to own an independent business and be an owner in this type of situation, but the return on investment is definitely there. And if you have the right kind of leadership, lay leadership like me, non-clinical leadership, you're gonna have a good steward that's going to take care of and make good investment decisions. Like,
Mm-hmm.
does it make sense to buy X,
Another.
Y, and Z?
Yeah.
Not just throwing money around, but spending money like it's somebody else's, but actually spending money like it's their own. And that's
Right.
what you need.
I think too, there's an interesting kind of, and I know I went through this and it's different because my business is very different, but everybody looks at being, the CEO or being the head honcho and they think, oh, when I get to that point, it's all going to be rainbows and butterflies. But I think a lot of people don't understand the stressors that come with being in that spot and having to be like you have, like you said, 23 physicians that you have to keep happy, who are all, I'm sure, coming to you with their own sets of challenges, problems, and asks about how are we furthering this or why is this happening? And I'd love to hear kind of your philosophy or mentality around how you handle that.
Well, everybody brings an agenda. I mean, you
Yeah.
can't get, I mean, when you probably can't get 4 friends together to decide on where to have lunch. So imagine 20, 15 or 14 highly educated, extremely intelligent men and women, who all are very, active in the industry and pay close attention to things.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting them to trust you to make those kind of decisions that, no, this is what we want to do with the lease, or this is how we want to structure, the profit sharing, or this is how we want to go
Yeah.
capture revenue, and these are what our benchmarks should be. These are evidence-based people. They were trained in an evidence-based world. They're scientists. And so data and evidence work, and you build trust through, a liberal use of data. I mean, I use data for everything, and it's never just my opinion or, in my experience. Look, I've had a great deal of experiences. I've done a lot of things, but I don't trust all of those. I don't believe all of those because the world changes.
Yeah.
So it's building trust, and it's recognizing that these folks are owners and they have their own practice. Yes, we are Fox Valley Orthopedics. We are one large organization, but they're also Dr. X and Dr. Y, and it's their practice and their name. So, you have to be sensitive to that. And, could I have done this job 10, 15 years ago? Probably not as well as I'm doing it now. There's a level of maturity that I have, developed. I mean, I'm still not terribly mature, but there's a level of maturity that I've been able to develop, professional maturity that I've been able to develop. That, I don't have to be right, and I don't have to have all the answers. And, just, you know what, I don't know the answer to that, and I'll get back to you. And then actually getting back to them. That's how you win trust and earn their favor and their trust. So that's kind of where my head sits. Kind of my philosophy is, I'm not arrogant enough to think that I have all the right answers. I have ideas, I have opinions, but opinions are just that. Their opinions are emotion. Fact is data, and that's what I try to build off of. And also admitting that I'm wrong is something I do quite a bit. But to say, look, there's an error there, or we made a mistake. We had an experience last year where we changed our electronic medical record, and we had to make some choices, and we're living with the consequence of one of those choices right now, and we're dealing with it, and we're managing it quite well. But it was the right choice to make at the time, even though when you look at it today, people are playing Monday morning quarterback. How could you ignore this last year? I think, well, because we were trying to make sure that the operation was running the way it's supposed to and take care of patients.
Yeah. I think people don't also see it too. They expect you to have all the answers, and it's impossible for one person to know everything in the moment. And it's like sometimes you make a decision because, in my mind, a good leader is somebody that can be decisive and say, this is how we're going to do it for now. And then if it doesn't end up working out, it's like trial and error. Then there's going to be another way to solve through whatever that challenge is. But for the time being, this is the best solution. Because there's not always the best puzzle piece to put in place and make it all come together.
Well, it's learning to be at peace with uncertain information and imperfect information. And that's been the thing. You see people that just get paralyzed with analysis because they don't, I don't know everything there is to know about this. Well, at some point you got to call the play. You got to, the clock is ticking and you got to get out there and go.
Right.
My grandfather, old Irish immigrant grandfather who died when I was 16, he had a little sign on his desk, and it said, the only job you start on top is digging a hole. And the other sign said, it's what you learn after you know it all that counts. Yeah. And I take both of those to heart because to me, those are very humbling statements. And anyone who's ever changed a diaper for a newborn baby can tell you there's nothing more humbling than that. So, you kind of put yourself, it's like, I'm not, this isn't everything in the world. And, we'll get an answer. So if I'm wrong, it's not the end of the world.
Right. Yeah. And it's also having the grace, I think, for yourself when you don't get it 100% right. I think for me, sometimes I think about business decisions and you can sit there and beat yourself up of coulda, shoulda, woulda. But it's like, as long as you know now, be thankful you found out in 6 months rather than 6 years, right? Because
and I've lived a great deal of those. I mean, if you get to be my age, in this world in healthcare, chances are you've been laid off or fired or demoted at some point in your career. I have. And I remember one time I got laid off from my first healthcare job, and I called an older brother and I said, they just let me go. And he's like, congratulations, it's the best day of your life. What? He goes, now you can go retool and do something else. I'm like, oh, okay. And that's, all right, well, I like this job. I want to go back and find another way to do it.
Right.
Or I'm going to try something different. So it's like you said, giving yourself the grace and the forgiveness to be able to,
Do other things.
not expect perfection.
Yeah.
I like to say to my teams a lot, let's not make perfect the enemy of the really good.
Yeah.
So let's give ourselves a break sometimes.
And sometimes those learning things are what gives you the answer that you needed that you wouldn't have had if you hadn't
Yeah.
made the mistake.
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
yeah.
my career path is a great example of that. In that, I started out. I mean, I was a broadcasting and film major from the University of Iowa, and I was going to be a television producer.
Oh,
And
interesting.
and
Okay.
here I am running an orthopedic practice now after having worked in healthcare for almost 30 years. And I have my doctorate in health administration, and I teach in health administration programs. I'm on faculty at Loyola University,
Yeah.
and I hear the voice in the back of my head sometimes while I'm teaching or while I'm presenting or making decisions, and it's like, how did you get here? What are you doing here? And it's just recognizing that I'm here because I went through all that other stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm who I am because I went through all that other stuff. It's a little cliche to say, but those experiences do form your opinions and who you are. And I think it's funny. And I tell students this all the time. It's like, it's not a straight line.
Mm-mm.
It's definitely not a straight line. You bounce all over the place. My wife is also in healthcare, and she's a speech language pathologist, and she was a clinician and a researcher for a long time. Well,
Yeah.
now she's an administrator, and it's just really funny to listen to this person who it was all swallowing all the time with her, and now it's renovations and EBITDA and all this other stuff that I wouldn't have guessed that she'd ever be interested in or have a thing.
Yeah.
So you can't be set on that straight line. And I know people who are, and it just they typically don't end up terribly happy because they don't open themselves up to different opportunities and ideas. And yeah, I could try that. Why not?
Yeah. I think it's so true. And I mean, I read a lot about kind of career progression, and I think there's a point that everybody has where it's almost like a bell curve. And if you don't kind of get risky a little bit, or you don't give yourself, you talked about quotes. My parents had one that said, jump and the net will appear, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you don't know how something's going to be
Yeah.
and it scares you a little bit, like chances are that's actually probably going to be the best thing for you, because if you
Mm-hmm.
just stay doing what you know and what's comfortable, then what great heights are you going to go to? Only the ones that you know and you've seen. And I think that's incredible that you talk on that, because so many people that I talk to in their careers, they tell me their plans as if it's 10 years from now. And I'm like, what's stopping you from doing it tomorrow?
Yeah. Well, I had an epiphany eureka moment when I was 23, 24, 23 years old. I'd been working for an advertising agency in Chicago for
Okay.
a couple of years, for 2 years out of college. And it was a great job. It was a lot of fun.
Mhm.
Everybody was young. It was, I mean, the great thing about Chicago, the Lincoln Park area in Chicago, is it's like a college town where everybody has money. And so it's fun. And, I was doing this job, and I was working on Better Buick Dealer Associations across the country. I was a media buyer, and
Okay.
we had just picked up a potato chip account, and everyone was all excited. The business is going great, and I went to this big Chicago Ad Club luncheon, and the guy who was the head of DDB Needham Worldwide Advertising stood up and said, in advertising, we have to be perfect because the world doesn't need another potato chip. We have to do our jobs so well that we convince them to buy the potato chip that we're selling and not the other guys. And that just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I thought, the world really doesn't need another potato chip, and it doesn't need another guy trying to sell potato chips. And
Yeah.
I actually called, one of the few times I called my dad, and I said, hey, you know, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. And this is not
Sure.
what I intended. And, this is a guy that in my mind, he had worked 40 years in his job as a state farm agent, had never deviated from that. And he said, look, you're 23. If you're not happy, don't do it. Go do something else. And I was like, I can do that. I have permission to do that. Okay. So
Yeah.
I went back, I went to grad school and I changed my trajectory a little bit.
Yeah.
And that ultimately led me to healthcare. And I remember I lost my first job in healthcare. I got laid off. And my wife at the time, she goes, well, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm going to find a job in healthcare. And we
Hmm.
were in central Illinois and there really wasn't a lot of opportunity. And so we made the leap to move up here to the Chicago area. And it's turned out to be the greatest thing professionally and personally, but professionally for both of us.
Yeah.
My wife's career has flourished as a result. My career has flourished as a result. But when I say it's flourished, it doesn't mean it hasn't. I mean, it's
Ebb
like
and
the
flow.
stock market. It's up, it's down, it's up, it's down. So
Yeah.
right now we're trending upward, which we like, and we hope it stays that way. But if it doesn't, we'll figure it out. We always do.
Yeah, I think that's great to mention because right now I think a lot of people have faced a layoff in the last few years, whether it was kind of
Mhm.
during the COVID era or just the last couple of years with the economy. I talked to a lot of people who were laid off or let go, and it's not because they were underperforming, but it was
No.
just, the state of the state. And when you look at business and like you said, the numbers, and I strategically try to hire people to not be at the top so that when it comes to looking at budget, they're not the first ones to go when it comes to that. But,
Mhm.
I saw it even when I started my business 2 years ago. I was working for a tech company and we'd gone through 2 or 3 rounds of layoffs and I had survived them. So, most people would be like, woohoo, that must mean, I'm supposed to
Yeah.
be here. And then my job is to go out and sell people to leave their current comfortable jobs to come work for a company that's having layoffs. So I was like, I couldn't sleep at night. I was
Mhm.
anxious wreck. I didn't want to just do it for the sake of a paycheck. And I thought, you know what? No, I'm going to get out of this. I'm going to go start my
Mhm.
own business and do it the way I know people will appreciate. Because I could have stayed there, been in a comfortable job, collected my paycheck, and gone on my merry way. But like you said, if you're not happy with something, even if you're 50, 60, change it, do something about it,
Right. Well, it's interesting. So I've had two experiences. I was laid off. So I worked for a hospital, small community hospital in the Chicago area, and
Sorry,
it
there's
was. I see it. Yeah, cicadas. And I was working for this hospital and loved the place, loved the sponsors. It was an order of nuns that were just wonderful people.
yeah,
And I get called into the president's office one day. I was the manager of marketing and business development. I get called into the office. And the funny thing is her name was Sister Patricia Ann, and my grade school principal's name was Sister Patricia Ann. So
oh
getting
wow,
called into Sister Patricia Ann's office had these triggering things in the back of my
yeah,
head. But uh, Sister Pat called me in and she goes, John, there's going to be some major changes coming, but don't worry, your position's protected. You're going to be with us for a long time. And I walked out of there, and for about a split second, I thought, wow, they really value me. This is great. And then the next split second, I thought to myself, I have a 13-month-old daughter. I can't live with this kind of uncertainty. And I called a recruiter. And
yeah,
that's when I made a shift from provider side, hospital side. I went and worked in the pharma industry for almost 10
mm,
years. And
wow.
yeah, that was
Um,
one of those. That's one of
when was
those.
that? Was that during the COVID era?
No, this was 2000. It was March
Okay.
of 2000. I left, and it was interesting. I mean, talk about stepping into something where you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I have no business working in the pharma industry, and how I survived and thrived in that industry, I was amazed because, I worked at this place for 9 years, was promoted 4 times. I was a vice president when I left the organization. We were doing great.
Hmm.
And then the economy tanked in the late 20, the late aughts.
Yep.
And the business changed and I had a really senior package. So they laid me off. And I took it. It was like that Seinfeld episode, it was going to be the summer of John. Because, they had this 6-month pay package. It was great.
Yeah.
So I came home and my wife and I were talking, and I said, "Look, I just finished my doctorate. I could go teach. I could be a college professor, which was a lifelong dream. I've never worked in insurance. I could go work on the health insurance side of things. I could go back to the provider side because I like the provider side and it was something I wanted to do. Or I can try to stay in pharma.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was, instead of being downtrodden that I'd lost my, high paying job, I was like kind of very relaxed about the options that I had set up for me. And it was the work that I had done previously that had set me up to have these kind of options. So I had my choice of where I wanted to go. And I looked at
Yeah.
all of those things. And I fell into a situation at Marion Joy Rehab Hospital in Wheaton, Illinois. And it was just, it was a huge pay cut, but it was the right place at the right time. And it was just a great experience. And it just worked out perfectly for me.
That's great.
And yeah. And so it was just, I just was able to, I was able to very rationally look at the things that were important to me and make a decision. For the previous 10 years, I had been on an airplane 3 times a week. I knew I didn't want to do that again.
Yeah.
I was Marion Joy's 15 minutes from our house. I could coach my daughter's soccer team, and do all that dad stuff. So it worked out great. And then they were bought by Northwestern. And I was a senior leader at Marion Joy. Northwestern came in, they made changes, and they made the right changes. It was good changes. I moved into another role, and they were very accommodating to me and kept me, and actually elevated some things about my job, which was great. And then, it was one that they couldn't sustain. So they said, here's a very, very nice, severance package. And away I went. And that's how I started teaching and full time at Loyola. I kind of semi-retired and lived my lifelong dream to be a college professor. And I was loving life. And somebody on LinkedIn, a friend of mine on LinkedIn, sent me this job posting and said, "Boy, this looks like you." And I'm like, "Yeah, what the hell?" So I sent the recruiter a note, and 5 interviews later, here I am.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was very
that in those moments where you're leaving the office from where you just got laid off, or you now are thinking, okay, I've got to find something new. And like you said, there's a kind of an overwhelming sense of peace because it's probably the first time in a long time that you've ever been able to sit with your thoughts and not have to have your phone ringing and your email dinging and this going off and that going off and someone needing something from you, to where you can just say, okay, what does John want to do?
Greatest vacation I've ever taken was in the summer of 2009. I didn't have a work email. It was awesome.
That is amazing. Yeah. It's because it's stressful, right? When you are in that position, somebody always needs something from you. And so a lot of times your own needs, or even to have that few minutes to sit and say, how do I feel about this? Right.
Well, and that's interesting. Now you're talking about a generational difference here. I have a 25-year-old daughter who works for a large insurance company, and she's gone on a couple of vacations with us since she's been working there. And I would rather check my email in the morning and then again, midday, to know what's going on. I don't want to walk back into the storm. I want to kind of know what's going on. Take 5 minutes and manage it if I can. And I look at her, and she doesn't turn her computer on during that time. And it's just a kind of a different mindset. I think, when I was entry level, I could walk away and not think about it. But I know that the reason that I have the salary and bonus structure that I have is because the expectation is I'm going to keep my eye on things even when I'm not there.
Right.
Today I'm in my home office, but I'm very connected to work. I'm going to be downtown at a Becker's conference on Friday, but I'll be connected to work the whole time. And I find it hard to disconnect.
Yeah.
And I'm getting better at vacations and limiting it. I used to do it all day long. And now I say, okay, 9 o'clock in the morning, I'm putting the phone away. I'll check it at noon. And then I'm going to go on to activities that don't make me able to check it. So,
yeah, you've got to be that way. And that's something that I think, even for myself has been hard. Like I just got married and we're going on a honeymoon. And I'm sitting here stressed out. And I call my parents and I'm like, well, I got to get everything set up so that things run smoothly when I'm away. And I'm still going to check emails in the morning. But, if something catastrophic happens for whatever reason, and my mom just said, it'll be okay.
Yeah.
People are going to be able to live without you for a few days.
Yeah. Well, Fox Valley Orthopedics has been in business 50 years. I've been there too. So they did okay before me. I'm sure they're going to do fine after me. Hopefully that's not for a long time. But, it's that if you feel you're indispensable, then there's a problem. You should,
Right.
Your team,
Outsource
as a
more.
leader, I want my team empowered to solve problems and fix things.
Yeah.
The weirdest thing about my job is I'm the person that the alarm company calls when an alarm goes off at one of our offices. And I'm probably the least qualified to handle it. So I'm walking out the door on Sunday, on Father's Day. We're going to, I don't know where we're going. And I see this call. And I'm like, what is this? And I answer the phone. It's like, the alarm at 1710 Randall. I'm like, it's Sunday afternoon and you're telling me about it. The panic button alarm has not, like, okay.
Yeah, perfect.
Do I need to go? It's going to be okay. And, there's very few things that you can screw up so bad that if you're not there, they can't be fixed. And I can't think of really anything anymore because we have such connectivity and access. I remember my dad finding a payphone on vacation in the 70s, and having to call into his office and spend, like an hour talking to policyholders and stuff. And I remember thinking, God, that's terrible. I can't imagine what that must be like. Here I am 40 years later doing the exact same thing. So.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, if you have the right resources on your team, I think that also is a huge testament to leadership, as if, like you said, you are empowering people and entrusting them to say, this is what needs to get done this week, and I'm not going to micromanage you and try to step in and handle it, because when you're on vacation, I want you to feel that same level of support and trust in me. So, that each of us can have that time apart to rest and recharge.
Well, and this goes to just my overall leadership philosophy. And the thing about nursing invented possibly the greatest management tool ever. And I don't think they realized what they were inventing when they did it. But the S-bar is a great way to manage and lead. And I have my staff, I said, look, if you have a problem, I'm happy to help you with it. But if you come in and drop a problem on my desk without context, you are now making that my problem. You are now making that my work. And I'm going to start asking questions. If I don't have context, I'm going to start asking questions. And you might not like the direction that my questions go. I might go down a different rabbit hole than you want to go down, or go down and ask for additional information that you may not be prepared for or want to even bring into the situation.
Yeah.
So I've got people now, they bring me an S-bar. What's the situation? What's the background? What's your assessment of it? And what's your recommendation? Mm-hmm. Most of the time, I'll agree. I will, if they do it right, I'll agree and say, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Sometimes the recommendation may be, not so great. And I'll say, I see what you're saying, but I don't know that we can do that. Or I might have additional information or additional context that says, no, we don't want to go that way because that'll interfere with something else. So when it's brought that way, it's just so much easier to empower. People are empowered to think through the problem and the challenge. Yeah. And it's not just, this happened, what do I do? It's like, well, I don't know, I'm paying you to be a manager or director. I would assume that you'd have a recommendation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what I want to see. And so I'm seeing this transition in the last 6 months or so really start to happen, where managers and leaders who are under me are coming to me with solutions. I told them about a year ago in a management meeting, I said, we're really, really good at identifying problems. Where we need work is identifying solutions. Yeah. And that really shook some people, actually offended some people. It shook people. And I said, it's great that we can identify problems, but what's the point of identifying a problem if we're not going to fix it? And you're not going to come up with a solution. And so that's kind of a cultural shift that I'm trying to make.
Right.
I recently had a situation where someone had a staff member that they needed to take some action on. We needed to separate from the staff member.
Mm-hmm.
And it was obvious that that was the answer. And this person came to me and they're like humming and hawing and going around it. And I said, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
And they said, well, and I said, no. What do you want to do? And she said, well, I'd like to separate. Do you feel you've done enough to salvage this person? Have you done everything? We've had this, we've done that. I said, is it documented? Yeah, it is.
Perfect. Go
Make the
for it.
call.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't make me the bad guy. Make the call, and
Yeah.
and you're not being a bad guy if you're separating from someone who's not doing their job, because they're probably not happy too. So you're probably making their
Right.
day.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. And I
No, maybe
think
not making
too,
their
so
day.
many people, they want that buy-in from other people. Like, they don't have the confidence to make the decision themselves. So they want buy-in. So they come to other people to say, here's the
Yeah.
situation.
Well, yeah.
And it's like, I have the same thing. And I remember I had a gym teacher, or she was a health teacher. She said, ask 3 before me. Meaning, like, if you don't have the answer to something before you come to me, who would have to answer 25 questions, ask 3 of your classmates, and maybe they know the answer and they can
Yeah.
explain it to you.
Yeah. And that teaches a level of self-determination where you figure stuff out on your own.
Yeah.
I literally just had the situation. My 19-year-old daughter I parked in the driveway behind her and she had to go to work to her lifeguard job. And she comes screaming in here 2 minutes before I got on with you. Dad, you have to move your car. I can't get out. And I looked at her and I said, yeah, you can. And, no, you can't. And I said, yeah, you can. I left your room. And it took her a minute, but she got out. And I'm thinking, you're going to hit my car. This is going to be bad. But I forced her to do something that she wasn't comfortable with. And
Yeah.
it ended up working. And now she feels more comfortable doing that. It's that whole teach a guy to fish thing.
Yeah.
I want my employees, I want our team to be able to fish for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But the big stuff, they still need to bring me in.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it when they ask me, what color do I want to paint? It's like,
Whatever color you feel is best.
Well, we're having an employee luncheon and they're asking me what we should serve. Why are you asking me?
Yeah. Pick something that's good and run with it. Yeah, it's something too that I don't know if you feel this way, and it's something I'm working on, is it's the level of trust too.
Yeah.
Because when you are used to, like, I was the person that if somebody said, if you want to do this project on your own in college versus having to do it with other people, go for it. And that was me. I'd say I'm going to do it myself because I know how I'm going to do it and I have an idea and I know that I'm going to do it 100%. And I don't want to have to, I'd always be the person that was doing the work for the person who didn't do it last minute, trying to figure it out.
The challenge with that though is that in the real world, in the workforce, you really can't do that because then you create cowboys. And I have a couple of those that are just doozers. They will, you want me to paint the building, I'll paint the building. You want me to, mow the lawn, I'll mow the lawn. They'll do it. And, I'll just do it myself. And it's like, you know what though? We're paying other people to do it as well, or to help you do it, or we're paying. I learned this lesson when I was first promoted to vice president at the consulting firm I worked in the pharma industry. And, I came up from a project manager who was a very doozer role into this vice president who was business development, all this stuff. And we were having this big meeting with the client. The client was having a big meeting and we were putting together the materials, and it was these pleather binders and we're putting slides in and stuff.
Yeah.
And there's 200 of them that need to be stuffed. And, it's very busy work and it's painfully monotonous. And it's just kind of, it's scut work at its best. So I walk by the conference room and I see these 2 young project coordinators, that were doing it. I thought, all right, well, I'm going to show them, I'm not too big to do, the little things, and nothing's beneath me. I'm going to go do it.
Yeah.
So I'm stuffing a couple of these things and, getting to know these folks a little bit. And managing director, who had just promoted me, walks by and she waves me out of the room. She's like, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm showing them team, I'm leading by example. She said, John, the client is not paying $250 an hour to have you stuff envelopes.
Yeah.
Let them do it. I'm like, oh, okay.
Right. Exactly.
So I don't want my directors and managers doing everything. I worked for a boss that was big on that. Directors and managers do everything. There's 6 people that did everything. The committee meetings were the same. It was the same 6 people. And then you had this level of people who are looking for advancement, who are looking for opportunities, and you never got to test them out because it was the same 6 people doing everything. So I like to bring people on. I do like the independent nature, but you have to be able to work within the organization structure and the team structure, and you have to be comfortable with it. Believe me, nobody wants to do things by themselves more than I do. It pains me sometimes to watch. I'm on a call here in 10 minutes, and I'm basically just there to listen, and it's going to drive me nuts. I mean, I'm big, the whole time. Yeah. So it's
well, are you a people pleaser too? Because I feel like I have that sense too when I see.
I've never been accused of being a people pleaser.
Okay.
When I took my DISC profile study, it came back very deep red. As a matter of fact, the consultant said it was the 3rd deepest red in the health system where I was working. And he said that he goes, your mantra is be brilliant, be brief, be gone.
Yes.
It checks out, and it's funny because my wife is the opposite on her. We were same system, and she gets one back and we're looking at it and we're just laughing. It's like, yeah, pretty much. So,
opposites attract. Yeah. I think I'm is it red, yellow, blue?
Green.
I'm a yellow or a green.
Yeah, no, there's no yellow and green in this guy.
Really?
I'm pretty much all red, a little bit of blue.
I think I'm the green and yellow was my combo.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I was all business and planning.
Yeah, but you need those people too.
You absolutely need those people because
yeah.
I'm terrible at it, and I hate birthday celebrations. I don't even celebrate my own birthday. But
I'm going to send you a birthday gift, John.
Oh, God, don't. And people do, and people love that stuff, and it's just like, I walk in and I see the balloons. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
I'm not even on the birthday list.
Wow.
I told them, I said, don't put it on the list. I don't want it on the list.
That is funny. I'm the person that a week ahead, I'm like, it's John's birthday on Monday. I'm going to make sure he's got what he wants. I'm going to prepare his desk.
Tomorrow is my younger daughter's birthday is tomorrow. And you'd think tomorrow was the national holiday, not today. So,
love it. Well, like I said, though, you need those people, especially in leadership positions, because you need to be decisive and you need to be able to look at the facts, the data, and not drive decisions with emotion. So makes sense.
All right.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I could sit here and pick your brain forever, but we'll maybe do another episode. And if you are looking to move into leadership
anytime,
or anything like that, reach out to John. He's on LinkedIn. And thank you all for watching and listening. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to the Healthy Careers Podcast, where we provide a platform for you to ask hard questions and get real answers. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and share it with your friends. Stay tuned for more episodes every other Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern.